现在的问题是，很多男人他一个人赚钱养不活一个家。
The current problem is that many men can't support a family on their own. If the wife goes to work, she can't take care of the kids. If she takes care of the kids, she can't work. If the mother-in-law comes to help with the kids, there are conflicts between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. If these conflicts can't be resolved, people start thinking about divorce. If the kids stay with the man, he has a hard time. If the kids stay with the woman, she has a hard time too. What can we do? Should we tell these low-income men not to get married? There aren't enough high-income men to go around for every woman. If these men don't marry, many women won't be able to marry either. But even if they do marry, the problems mentioned above remain unsolved, so they have to endure it. The real issue is that the cost of getting married and raising kids is too high. This is why many people are afraid to marry and have children, not because they don't want to.
据民政部发布的数据统计，2021年结婚登记人数仅有763万对。
Why are more and more young people choosing not to get married? According to data released by the Ministry of Civil Affairs in 2021, the number of marriage registrations was only 7.63 million couples. This is nearly half of the 13.46 million couples in 2013, the highest number. It's the lowest since 1986. As someone who has been active in the matchmaking market for 8 years, I feel quite qualified to discuss this issue. Why are we not getting married? It's simple. First, we can't afford it. Second, we can't afford to marry. Third, we can't afford to get married at all. For men, marriage means spending money. If you have money to spend, that's fine, right? If you don't have money, you can only amuse yourself. Let's first talk about why we can't afford dating. Nowadays, if you find a woman on the street and you ask her what her criteria for a partner is, she'll definitely tell you she wants a guy who is at least 1.8 meters tall, has a car and a house, and a monthly salary over $10,000. If you meet these criteria, it just means you have a foot in the door. If you don't meet these criteria, she won't even be interested in getting to know you, even if you are very sincere. If they are willing to get to know you, you must be prepared to spend a lot. It's falsely claimed that this is to test whether you love her. If you're unlucky, you could spend a year or so showing affection, only to find that what's expected from you isn't just money gifts but cars, houses, dowries, and savings. Most people end up spending all their savings during the dating period. Where would they find money to buy a car or a house later? For women, if you have nothing, you are just trying to take advantage and she'll just say goodbye. Some people say, I'll work hard to buy a car and a house before dating. But even if you buy a car and a house, many girls won't think highly of you. Your car and house are personal assets. The loans you owe will be repaid jointly as a couple. Many young women think that paying off loans together means it reduces their quality of life. So many men with cars and houses can't find good matches. What do girls want? They want a house paid in full and a huge dowry. This huge amount varies from person to person. For me, I think 100,000 yuan is a huge sum. Especially in Jiangxi, some girls start asking for 300,000 or 500,000, which they've never even seen that much money and yet believe all men can afford it. Why are some girls so insistent on the dowry? Because it's the only chance in their lives to legally get a large sum of money. If you can meet these demands, the next step is a luxurious wedding. The question is, can you pull that off? If you can't, they'll think you don't love her. I believe many men can manage it, but then they think about the high divorce rate and feel it's too risky, so they decide not to take the plunge.
一个非常可怕的现象，现在不谈恋爱的男生已经进入了报复式不婚，也就是说，现在的小。
There is a very scary phenomenon. Now, young men who are not dating have entered a phase of retaliatory non-marriage. In other words, there are almost no young men in the matchmaking scene anymore. They are trying to fight back against the distorted views on marriage and romance today, aiming to create an era of gender equality in relationships. The increasingly low marriage and birth rates show that this time, men are serious about it. You think it's hard to pursue? Then I won't pursue you anymore. I'd rather stay single for life. You believe that childbirth deprives women of freedom? Then I won't have kids. I don't want to be manipulated. Many attribute the low birth rate to women's higher education levels, and I don't deny that. Of course, this is part of the reason. We can look to Japan and South Korea. where extreme feminism has led men to prefer dating in the virtual world over marriage. If young men in our country don't get married now, then 20 years from now, our marriage and romance situation will definitely trend towards Japan and South Korea. Over there, when the men lie flat, the women's demands for dowries and houses keep decreasing, while men remain indifferent.
很多女粉丝问我的问题啊，其实我觉得这句话应该换一个说法，不是娶不到老婆的男人越来越多，而是不愿意娶老婆的男人越来越多。
Why do people say that more and more men can't find a wife? A lot of female fans have asked me this question. I think we should rephrase it. It's not that there are more men who can't find a wife. Rather, there are more men who don't want to get married. Many people only know that there are more men than women in our society right now, but they don't realize that the ratio in the marriage market is actually 1 to 3. In some places, it even goes up to 1 to 8. This means that fewer men are choosing marriage. For every 8 women wanting to get married, only 1 man is available, even though many independent women claim they don't need men. Big data shows that men are the ones who really enjoy being single now and find it appealing. So what is causing men's willingness to marry to decline? The only thing I can think of is that marriage doesn't seem to bring them a situation where 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Instead, it often adds to their debts and emotional wounds. People say marriage is meant to make life better and happier than being single. It's supposed to mean having someone to take care of you when you're sick, someone to provide a warm haven in the chaos of life. If none of this exists and all that's left is constant criticism and daily disappointment, then what's the point of such a marriage? When a man unwittingly marries the wrong person and ends up as a money-making machine with little love and care, life can feel worse than being single. Marriage stops feeling exciting. So, do you think they really don't want to get married? Of course not. They just don't want to marry into a situation where their efforts aren't rewarded. Do men fear hardship? Not really. They fear going through hardship without anyone caring. Do men fear being tired from work? Not really. They fear being tired from work and still being criticized. Men don't feel embarrassed about eating cheap fast food. They only feel embarrassed if they can't afford the gifts you want. Yet, in the end, these men find that no one cares for them. Isn't that quite sad?
In today's China, more and more men are choosing not to get married. This has become a serious social issue as the birth rate plummets. So why are Chinese men reluctant to marry? In fact, they don't even want to date. They say that finding a partner is not worth it because dating costs money. Even just meeting up requires money for meals and drinks, like milk tea. This doesn't even take into account expenses for holidays like Valentine's Day, Qixi Festival, birthdays, or Women's Day, which involve flowers and gifts. But if you don't date, you don't have to spend money. Saving money means you're saving. They think that holding her hand is no different than holding someone else's hand. Touching her leg is just like touching someone else's leg. Hugging her waist is the same as hugging someone else's waist. Some love experts say that dating isn't just about physical gestures like holding hands or hugging. The more important part is whether we can open our hearts and accept each other wholly, including their past, present, and future. Each relationship is a new journey. Even if some scenery is similar along the way, each feeling and experience is unique. If we truly engage, feel, and cherish, then every relationship is worthwhile. But all of this is based on the money we love and hate. Without money, how can one start a new romantic journey? What right do you have to experience love if you're broke? Let's be realistic. I've seen many people date for 6 months to a year, only to break up, and all the money spent feels wasted. What if they accidentally end up discussing marriage? That's when you need a dowry. Where does that money come from? If you can't afford it, you ask your parents. If your parents are also broke, then what's the point of dating? It would be better not to date. Dating costs money. Not dating means saving money. If you're lucky enough to meet a girl who doesn't want a dowry and doesn't mind your financial situation, and you marry her, but afterward you lack financial stability, life becomes chaotic. Without the romance, life turns into a daily grind of chores and expenses. If you can't support your kids, your wife might leave for someone else. In that situation, what's the point of getting married? But if you don't marry, you may save hundreds of thousands. Without dating, you don't have to spend much. You don't need to buy a house or a car, saving tens of thousands. Holding hands, going out to watch a movie, or shopping all costs money. But if you're single, You can save all that, spending it on yourself. Only when you spend money on yourself do you truly own that money. Most men in the lower stratum of society desire to get married. There are thousands, even tens of thousands, who are willing to marry. The men who do not want to marry often have a certain understanding of marriage. They have achieved some financial stability, but have not yet found a woman who makes them love deeply. So they simply choose not to marry. Objectively speaking, in most Chinese families, men earn the living and women manage the household and take care of the children. In better situations, perhaps the mother-in-law will help with the children too. Because men carry most of the economic responsibility, and most men aren't capable enough to earn easy money or make money with their brains, they can only do physical labor. They often have to leave their homes and go far away to do hard work to support their families. Those who have spent nights on hard seats of cheap trains might have seen this scene. The carriages are mostly filled with migrant workers in old, worn-out clothes, carrying big bags. When they're hungry, they eat instant noodles. When they're tired, they sleep on their bags. It's not because they can't get sleeper tickets or don't want to buy high-speed rail tickets, but because they're poor and can only afford the cheapest hard seat tickets on these trains. In China, 960 million people earn less than 2,000 yuan a month. This is a difficult and upsetting statistic. Most Chinese men live quite hard lives, sustaining themselves with much hardship. Those who grow up in such an environment either sink deeper into it, continuing to struggle in the lower strata of society, sacrificing themselves to support their families, and leading a humble life, or they will extract all their potential through pain and hardship, climb out of the lower strata, and then take their lives seriously, not wasting any of their efforts. Not wasting their efforts means not marrying just any woman they're not satisfied with, not casually sacrificing their lives, and not willing to give everything for a random blind date. What can lead them to marriage is true equality, and at the same time, someone who genuinely touches their hearts, meaning the other person has no suspicion of taking advantage and can evoke feelings of appreciation, fondness, recognition, and affection. Unfortunately, there are very few women who can meet these expectations. It's not an exaggeration to call them rare. So, for these men, it seems better to live alone than to settle for a woman who is mediocre in every aspect or even slightly disappointing, and then have to share everything they have worked hard for over 2 or 3 decades, including the sweat and effort of their parents.